Hey guys, tonight we're going deep. Deeper than you can probably imagine, into the crushing, silent blackness where the pressure can turn a person to pulp in a nanosecond. We're going to a place where sunlight is a forgotten myth, and the only stars are the bioluminescent creatures that drift like ghosts in the abyss. We are going to find the single greatest secret in human history, and like most great secrets, it's probably going to get us all killed. You probably won't survive this, not really, not with your worldview intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know down in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see how far these little bedtime stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The hum is the first thing you notice. Not the gentle whir of a fan, but the deep, bone-rattling thrum of the Triton 7 submersible's life support systems. It's the only thing standing between you and 4,000 meters of water pressure. For the past 6 weeks, this 3-meter titanium sphere has been your office, your dining room, and your bunk. You're a xenogeologist, a fancy title for someone who studies rocks in places they shouldn't be, and right now, you're part of a team mapping a previously unexplored section of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. It's monotonous work. Hours of staring at sonar readouts, the occasional sweep of the sub's powerful exterior lights revealing nothing but basaltic rock, abyssal silt, and the slow, constant blizzard of marine snow, that endless, gentle cascade of organic detritus from the world above. Your pilot, a stoic ex-Navy submariner named Eva, calls out from her station, getting some weird returns on the forward array. Interference, maybe. You unclip from your seat and float over to her console, your movements slow and deliberate in the cramped space. On the screen, amidst the fuzzy, chaotic topography of the seafloor, is something impossible, a perfect line. Then another, intersecting it at a flawless 90-degree angle. Then more, forming a grid pattern that stretches for kilometers. That's not interference, you whisper, your breath fogging a small patch of the cold plexiglass viewport. Run a magnetometry scan. Eva's fingers dance across her console. The results that flicker onto the screen make the hair on your arms stand up. The grid isn't just a shape. It's emitting a low-level, coherent energy field. Not the chaotic signatures of natural magnetic ore, but something organized, something artificial. A nervous energy fills the submersible. The third crew member, a biologist named Ben, is wide-eyed. Could it be a new type of hydrothermal vent formation, a crystalline structure we've never seen? You shake your head, your mind racing through every geological possibility and dismissing them one by one. Nature doesn't do Euclidean geometry on this scale, Ben, not down here. The unspoken thought hangs heavy in the recycled air. Humans don't either. No nation has the technology to build something this massive, this deep. The mood shifts from scientific curiosity to a kind of primal trepidation. For centuries, this part of the world has been the domain of myth. Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, spoke of a great naval power located beyond the Pillars of Hercules that vanished in a single night. Historians still argue whether Plato was recounting a distorted memory of a real event, like the Bronze Age eruption of Thera that crippled the Minoans, or if he simply invented Atlantis as a cautionary tale against hubris. Everyone on this sub, every oceanographer and geologist, knows the stories. They're a running joke on long expeditions. Maybe we'll find Atlantis today, no one ever expected to. I'm taking us in for a visual, Eva says, her voice tight. Surface Command wants eyes on. The sub's thrusters engage with a soft whine, pushing you towards the anomaly. The minutes stretch into an eternity of blackness. The only light is the faint green glow of the instrument panels. You are descending into a canyon revealed by the sonar, a trench that seems to have been carved not eroded. The walls are unnervingly smooth. Then Eva hits the main forward lights, and your world breaks. It's not rock, it's not metal, it's something else. Before you, stretching up from the canyon floor beyond the reach of the Triton 7's lights, is a wall. It's fashioned from a material that seems to drink the light, a substance the color of obsidian, but with a faint inner luminescence like a captive twilight. Veins of a soft, pulsating blue light crawl across its surface in complex, branching patterns, like a vast circulatory system. The structure is impossibly ancient, covered in places by thousands of years of silt, yet it looks active, maintained. My God, Ben breathes, his face pressed against the viewport. It's alive. He's right. As you drift closer, you can see that the material of the wall is not entirely solid. It shifts with a slow, geologic patience. It has the texture of polished coral, but the scale of a mountain range. This isn't a ruin. It's a hibernation. You stare at the impossible architecture, the sweeping arches and towering spires that defy the crushing pressure of the abyss, and a singular, terrifying thought crystallizes in your mind. You haven't found a lost city. You've found a sleeping one, and you're parked on its doorstep. The hum of your submersible suddenly feels very, very loud. The hum of your submersible is answered. The pulsating blue veins of light in the wall begin to race, converging on your position like tributaries flowing into a river of light. The pattern they form is one of impossible, elegant complexity, part mathematical equation, part living mandala. An intense vibration shivers through the Triton 7's hull, a low-frequency resonance that isn't just heard, but felt deep in your bones, in your teeth. It's not an attack, it feels like a greeting, or a summons. Before Eva can even think to engage the thrusters, the wall in front of you begins to dissolve. It doesn't open like a door. The very substance of it dematerializes, peeling away in silent, shimmering layers to reveal a cavernous opening into the heart of the structure. You're being pulled in. A gentle, inexorable current takes hold of the sub, drawing you from the utter black of the Atlantic abyss into a space filled with a soft, silver-blue luminescence. The water pressure display on your console spins wildly for a moment before stabilizing at a reading that makes no sense. It's equivalent to being only a few hundred feet below the surface. They are controlling their immediate environment on a level that defies physics as you know it. As you pass through the threshold, the gateway seals behind you, the wall reforming as if it were never breached. You are now completely, utterly inside. Your sub drifts through a colossal, water-filled cavern. Above and below you, vast structures spiral towards a central point of light, their design a fusion of organic growth and deliberate engineering. Glowing flora and fauna, things that have no place in any biology textbook, drift through the water, leaving trails of phosphorescent light. And then you see them. Figures moving through the water with impossible grace, their movements more akin to flight than swimming. They approach the submersible, and your breath catches in your chest. They are humanoid, yes, but exquisitely adapted to this world. They are taller and more slender than humans, with skin that has the pearlescent sheen of an abalone shell. Their large, dark eyes, devoid of pupils, seem to hold the wisdom of ages. Faint, intricate lines of bioluminescence pulse softly on their skin, mirroring the light in the walls, a silent, living language. They wear no breathing apparatus, no cumbersome suits. They are as at home in the water as you are in the air. One of them, distinguished by a more intricate pattern of light on its brow, raises a long, four-fingered hand towards the Triton 7. And then your mind is filled with light. There are no words, no sounds. There is only a flood of pure, unfiltered information. It's a cascade of images, emotions, and deep, resonant truths that pour directly into your consciousness. You feel the raw, unfiltered shock of their discovery, the clumsy, loud metal thing that is your submersible appearing at their gates. You feel their caution, their immense curiosity, and a deep, abiding sadness that feels ancient. And then comes the history, not as a lesson, but as a memory, your memory. You are standing on a sun-warmed marble balcony looking out over a city of breathtaking beauty. The sky is a shade of blue you've never seen. But there is fear in the air, a deep thrum of anxiety that has gripped the world. You see the sky ignite, not with one falling star, but with thousands. This is the cataclysm. This is their point of divergence. Scientists today call it the Younger Dryas Impact Event, a theoretical cluster of cometary fragments that struck the Earth around 12,800 years ago, triggering massive tsunamis and plunging the world into a 1,000-year winter. For you, in this shared memory, it is no theory. It is the apocalypse. You feel the ground heave, the continent-sized island shuddering under the bombardment. You see mountains vomit fire and coastal cities, entire civilizations on the continental shelves, swallowed by the boiling, enraged ocean. But you also see their response. While their outer territories were annihilated, the central plate, the heart of their empire, was protected by a phenomenal energy field. The technology saved them from utter extinction, but it couldn't hold back the planet itself. The tectonic plate upon which they lived fractured. The world buckled. Plato's story was an echo of a truth distorted by time. Atlantis didn't sink in a single night. It shattered. The heartland survived, but it was now a fraction of its former glory, a wounded citadel surrounded by a newly formed, impassable archipelago of jagged, unstable seamounts. They were cut off, marooned by geology. Here in the aftermath, you feel the great debate, the great schism. Atlantean chroniclers still debate whether the decision that followed was an act of profound wisdom or unforgivable fear. They could have used their remaining energy to rise, to reclaim the surface. Instead, their leaders chose the opposite. They saw the chaos of the sky, the fury of the planet, and deemed the surface world, your world, as inherently unstable, a realm of unending, violent change. They chose to turn their backs on the sun, to sever all ties. They used their atmospheric and geological mastery to create a cloak, a zone of energetic silence around their last bastion, a scaled-up version of naturally occurring anomalies like the Mapimi Silent Zone, hiding them from the primitive survivors on the surface and all the technology that would follow. They chose the deep, the constant, the quiet. They chose isolation. And for 11,000 years, they have remained here in the dark, nurturing their own evolution, becoming something other than human, becoming Atlantean. The flood of information recedes, leaving you gasping in the stale air of the sub, your mind reeling. You, Eva, and Ben look at each other, tears streaming down your faces from the sheer emotional and sensory overload. You didn't just hear a story, you lived it, and you now understand they aren't lost. They are hidden, and you have just stumbled through the greatest curtain in history. Your return to the surface is a blur. The Atlanteans release your submersible from their city with the same silent, effortless control with which they captured it. One moment you are in their illuminated, pressurized world. The next you are back in the crushing, absolute dark of the abyss, the portal ceiling behind you. The only evidence of your encounter is a small, smooth, obsidian-like stone resting on your console, a gift left for you that hums with a barely perceptible warmth, and the impossible, perfectly correlated memories seared into the minds of all 3 crew members. The journey up feels longer than the 6 weeks you spent descending. You aren't just carrying scientific data anymore. You're carrying a truth that will cleave human history into 2 distinct eras, before the discovery and after. When the Triton 7 breaches the surface, bobbing in the grey Atlantic swell under a sky that suddenly looks alien and thin, the chaos begins. Your support vessel, the RV Odyssey, treats it as a medical emergency at first. The 3 of you are hysterical, speaking over one another, a jumble of words like living city, telepathy, and 11,000 years. You're placed in medical quarantine, but your sensor data is uploaded. And then silence. A deep, profound silence from mission control that stretches for 12 agonizing hours. When the response comes, it's not from your project director. It's a scrambled, encrypted channel, and the voice on the other end belongs to a 4-star general from the Pentagon. The world learns the secret not through a carefully managed press conference, but through a chaotic, unstoppable leak. A junior analyst at NORAD sees the energy signature from the Atlantean city, anomalies they had been tracking for years, but classified as natural phenomena, suddenly resolve into something undeniably artificial, corroborating your data. He tells his brother tells a friend who works for a wire service, and the dam breaks. It's the ultimate wow signal, a clear, unambiguous sign of intelligence, not from a distant star, but from the uncharted depths of our own planet. Within 24 hours, your face, along with Eva, S. and Ben's, is the most famous on Earth. News helicopters circle your ship like vultures. The internet collapses and rebuilds itself around this single topic. Global stock markets plunge into freefall as every industry, every commodity, every future projection is rendered meaningless. What is the value of oil when an underwater civilization might be powered by harnessed quantum foam? What is the point of pharmaceutical research when a society has had millennia to master biology? You watch the world you knew dissolve from a satellite feed in your secured cabin. You see crowds gathering in every major city, their faces upturned to screens showing artists' renditions of what you described. You see the UN Security Council convened in a permanent emergency session, the ambassadors, faces a mask of feigned composure and raw panic. You see the rise of the first cargo cults in coastal communities in the Philippines and West Africa, where fishermen begin creating intricate shrines from driftwood and shells, chanting for the people of the water to bless them with their bounty. Pundits and philosophers immediately began to debate whether this moment marked the dawn of a new golden age for humanity or the beginning of its utter subjugation. Your debriefing is surreal. You are no longer a scientist. You are a prophet, an oracle. You're airlifted to a secure facility in the Nevada desert and find yourself in a sterile conference room, briefing a silent, grim-faced assembly of world leaders, intelligence chiefs, and stunned physicists. You tell them everything, recounting the shared memories, the history of the Great Schism, the sheer, unimaginable scale of Atlantean technology. You describe their philosophy of stability, their disdain for the chaotic surface world. When you place the small, warm stone from your sub on the conference table, a dozen different scanning devices are aimed at it, all returning blank or nonsensical readings. It obeys no known physical laws. It is a paperweight that refutes all of human science. In the weeks that follow, a tense new normal settles over the globe. Atlantis, for its part, remains silent. After that first, world-shattering revelation, they retreat back behind their cloak of energy. They do not respond to the frantic, clumsy attempts at communication sent by every world government. Probes and submarines sent to their location are gently but firmly repelled by invisible walls of force. They have made their existence known, and now they are waiting, watching, judging. This is the new reality. Humanity is no longer the sole intelligence on the planet. The comforting narrative of our species, our slow climb from the primordial soup to the peak of earthly creation, has been exposed as a comforting lie. We are not the masters of this world. We are the noisy tenants living in the attic, unaware of the ancient, powerful landlord living in the deep, silent basement. And as you sit in your gilded cage, a protected asset of the now united global governments, you look out at the desert sunset and feel a profound sense of dread. The shockwave has passed. Now everyone, from presidents to street sweepers, is holding their breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The silence from the deep is more terrifying than any threat could ever be. For months, the world waits in a state of collective anxiety. Then, as silently as they appeared, the Atlanteans make their move. It's not a declaration or a threat. It is a gift. An invitation is sent, not through diplomatic channels, but as a universal, non-verbal pulse of information felt by every world leader and high-level scientist simultaneously. A set of coordinates in the abyssal plain of the South Atlantic, a date, a request for a single, unmanned research vessel. Of course, you are chosen to lead the remote science team. From a command center in Geneva that feels more like a war room, you guide the drone sub to the designated location. There, resting on the seafloor, is a pedestal of the same living, obsidian-like material as their city. And on top of it sits a glowing, crystalline lattice about the size of a car engine. As the drone's manipulator arms gingerly lift it, the object pulses with a soft, coppery light. The Atlanteans, in their first communication since the revelation, give it a name that echoes from the depths of myth directly into your mind: orichalcum. Plato described it as a metal that flashed with the light of fire, second only to gold in value. He was, it turns out, understating things dramatically. Back in a shielded, underground lab, the orichalcum proves to be something that shatters the standard model of physics. It's not a metal. It's a stable form of exotic matter, a crystal that doesn't produce energy through any process you recognize. It doesn't get hot through fission or fusion. It doesn't consume fuel. It simply radiates power. Clean, limitless, terrifying power. It seems to resonate with the fabric of spacetime itself, drawing energy from a dimension your science had only theorized about in the most esoteric equations. The substance is like the mythical starlight plastic from the late 20th century, a material whose properties seem magical and whose formula is a complete, maddening enigma. The Atlanteans have given humanity fire, and now everyone wants to be Prometheus. But the gift comes with a terrible catch. Atlantis has provided the proof of concept, but not the means of production. In a follow-up data pulse, they reveal that orichalcum cannot be manufactured with human technology. It must be found. It accretes naturally in microscopic quantities in very specific geological zones where the planet's electromagnetic field is uniquely thin, where the barrier between realities is weaker. And they provide a map of these potential zones. The map is a death sentence for the old world. The great oil fields of the Middle East, the vast coal seams of Appalachia and China, the natural gas reserves of Siberia, all worthless overnight. The new epicenters of power are a handful of previously overlooked locations. A remote plateau in the Bolivian Andes, a deep, inaccessible canyon in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a cluster of islands in the Indonesian archipelago, and a desolate stretch of tundra in northern Canada. The California gold rush of 1849 was a quaint historical footnote by comparison. This is a global, high-tech, high-stakes scramble for the literal keys to the future. The world doesn't unite, it fractures. The geopolitical landscape is redrawn in a matter of weeks. Nations that were once global footnotes become the new kingmakers, their lands suddenly the most valuable real estate on the planet. The United States, China, and Russia, with their massive militaries and desperate need to maintain influence, initiate a frantic neo-colonial rush, not with armies, but with irresistible offers of investment, technology, and security assistance to the new resource-rich nations. It's a velvet-gloved invasion. Your life is unrecognizable. You are the de facto head of the UN's Orichalcum Commission, the person tasked with understanding the Atlantean gift. You live in a blur of shielded laboratories and frantic video calls with heads of state. They look to you for answers you don't have. They want you to make more orichalcum, but you can no more replicate it than a medieval blacksmith could build a smartphone. All you can do is study the sample, which you privately nickname the Chimera, and try to grasp the alien science it represents. Meanwhile, the chaos you're witnessing is deliberate. Diplomats and strategists began to argue in hushed, terrified tones whether the gift was an act of benevolence meant to wean humanity off fossil fuels, or a Machiavellian masterstroke of staggering genius. By giving the world a limitless prize and then scattering the keys in a handful of unstable regions, Atlantis has effectively turned the surface world against itself. They haven't fired a single shot, yet they have destabilized every government, shattered the global economy, and ignited a dozen simmering conflicts. They are pitting the children of the sun against one another in a frantic race for power. The first reports of skirmishes begin to trickle in from the Congo, where rival militias, secretly backed by different global powers, clash over control of a newly discovered orichalcum survey site. The technological gold rush has begun, and the first price is being paid in blood. The orichalcum rush doesn't just reshape the global economy. It forges a new world order defined by a single, terrifying question: submission or sovereignty? As the first orichalcum-powered cities begin to rise, their strange, glowing architecture reaching for the sky in places like La Paz and Kinshasa, the planet splits into two distinct and irreconcilable camps. A new Cold War has begun, fought not with nuclear brinkmanship, but with technological dependency and philosophical allegiance. On one side are the aligned nations. This bloc is a strange mix of formerly developing countries that are now resource-rich, and opportunistic developed nations who see the path to renewed relevance through fealty. They embrace Atlantis as a benevolent, guiding force. They sign treaties, though the terms are always subtly dictated from the deep, granting Atlantis advisory roles in their governments in exchange for technology that goes far beyond simple energy. They receive breakthroughs in materials science, medicine, and agriculture. Their cities become sleek, clean, and eerily beautiful, like the Potsdam giants of old Prussia, their impossible structures serving as magnificent propaganda, a constant, glowing advertisement for the benefits of cooperation. Famine is eradicated within their borders. Diseases that once plagued millions are cured with a single treatment derived from deep-sea biology. Their people are healthy, prosperous, and secure. On the other side are the resistance powers, a grim alliance of the old guard. The United States, the European Federation, and the Pan-Asian Coalition, a new bloc formed from the remnants of Russian and Chinese influence, watch their global dominance evaporate and view Atlantis with deep suspicion. They see the aligned not as partners in progress, but as client states, the first provinces in a slowly expanding global empire. They call the Atlantean gifts golden chains and warn of cultural annihilation. The central ideology of the resistance is human self-determination. They argue that humanity must solve its own problems, that true progress cannot be given by an outside force, only earned. Historians of this new era still argue whether this stance was born of a noble desire to protect human freedom or a desperate, fearful clinging to their own obsolete power. This new global conflict is governed by a twisted version of the 20th century's domino theory. Nations watch their neighbors join the aligned bloc and see their own economies begin to suffer. Access to orichalcum-derived technologies becomes the defining factor of modern life. Without it, a country is doomed to become a second-class power, a relic of the fossil fuel age. The pressure to align, to kneel, becomes immense. One by one, neutral nations are forced to choose a side, and the map of the world becomes a stark binary of blue, aligned, and gray, resistance. And you are trapped squarely in the no-man's land between them. The UN, your official employer, has become a hollowed-out shell, a forum for the two blocs to trade barbs, while the real power is brokered elsewhere. You are the world's most sought-after mind, and its most compromised soul. The aligned offer you unlimited resources, a chance to work directly with Atlantean scientists to unlock secrets you can only dream of. They paint a picture of a utopian future, and they need you to be the human face of it, the bridge that makes their alien knowledge palatable to the rest of humanity. They tempt you with the ultimate scientific prize. The Resistance, meanwhile, approaches you in secret, in clandestine meetings in drab, shielded rooms. They don't offer you gleaming labs. They offer you a conscience. They want you to find a flaw, a vulnerability, a way to level the playing field. They ask you to turn your unique knowledge of orichalcum into a weapon, or at least a defense. They speak of freedom, of the human spirit, of the danger of accepting gifts from a power whose true motives are unknown. They tempt you with the mantle of savior. You spend your days studying the Chimera Stone under UN jurisdiction, and your nights fielding encrypted calls from both sides. You watch news feeds showing children in aligned Africa laughing, their bellies full thanks to Atlantean agricultural tech. Then you switch channels and see grim-faced soldiers from the Resistance bloc patrolling their borders, their old-world tanks and jets looking like pathetic toys against the rumored power of their new rivals. You've seen the serene, ancient wisdom in the Atlanteans' minds, but you've also seen how effortlessly they plunged the world into chaos to achieve their aims. The choice is paralyzing. Is a gilded cage still a cage? Is a difficult freedom worth the price of suffering? The world has drawn its battle lines, choosing between a comfortable, guided evolution and a perilous, independent future. And you, the xenogeologist who just wanted to study deep-sea rocks, are standing at the fulcrum, unable to move, knowing that whichever way you lean, the world will tilt with you. The battle for the planet's future is not just being fought in boardrooms and secret military bases. It's being fought in the hearts and minds of its 7 billion inhabitants. The revelation of an 11,000-year-old civilization has sent a cataclysmic shockwave through the very foundations of human belief. Every sacred text, every creation myth, every historical timeline is rendered, at best, incomplete, and at worst, a comforting fiction. This period becomes known as the Great Forgetting, a time when humanity collectively loses its oldest stories. Established religions are the first to crumble. How can one read the book of Genesis as literal truth when a civilization of beings, far more powerful than you, existed long before its timeline even began? The great monotheistic faiths reel. Papal encyclicals attempt to frame the Atlanteans as a separate, parallel creation of God, a move that satisfies few. Imams struggle to place these beings within Islamic cosmology, with some declaring them a form of advanced jinn and others heretics. Hinduism's vast, cyclical timescale allows it to absorb the shock more easily, but the tangible, physical reality of Atlantis challenges its spiritual focus. Churches, mosques, and temples see their congregations dwindle, not out of malice, but out of a profound, disorienting confusion. The old answers no longer fit the new questions. History, your own field's distant cousin, fares even worse. Museums quietly remove their prehistoric exhibits. The neat progression from Stone Age to Bronze Age to Iron Age is meaningless now. What does Bronze Age even mean when a society with access to exotic matter existed contemporaneously? A new, radical version of the panspermia hypothesis takes root, suggesting that humanity itself might be a discarded Atlantean experiment. The entire story of human achievement is suddenly tainted by the possibility that we were never truly alone, never truly the authors of our own destiny. But the human need for meaning is a vacuum that demands to be filled. Out of the ashes of the old world, a volatile and fervent spiritual renaissance is born. In the aligned nations, new syncretic faiths blossom, often with the quiet encouragement of the state, much like how Constantine the Great used Christianity to unify a fractured Roman Empire. You see broadcasts from the Church of the Tidewater Saints, where sermons speak of two covenants, the first with Christ, the second with the wise teachers from the sea. In Jakarta, the way of the stable deep blends Islamic traditions with Atlantean philosophies of order and tranquility, preaching that submission to Allah and acceptance of Atlantean guidance are one and the same path. More extreme faiths emerge from the fringes. The cult of the deep becomes a global phenomenon, worshipping the Atlanteans as the literal gods of the sea, the true descendants of Poseidon. You watch disturbing footage of mass baptisms on stormy coastlines, of followers rejecting the chaos of the sunlit world and seeking a purity they can only find in the crushing, orderly depths. Conversely, the resistance bloc experiences a powerful surge of militant secularism. With all gods and myths cast into doubt, they double down on the one thing they feel they can trust: humanity. Humanity first becomes their rallying cry. They champion science, their own, pure science, untainted by Atlantean gifts, reason, and human potential with a religious fervor. They see the new faiths of the aligned as the highest form of treason, a willing surrender of the human soul. Theologians and sociologists of the era still debate whether the Great Forgetting was a tragic loss of cultural heritage or a necessary, painful cleansing of ancient superstitions. You, however, exist in the agonizing space between. The leaders of the new faiths seek you out, viewing you as a John the Baptist figure, the prophet who witnessed the coming of the new age. They show you their holy books, their new iconography, and you see the genuine comfort it brings to their followers. You see the hope in their eyes, a lifeline in a world that has lost its moorings. But you know the truth. You have felt the Atlantean consciousness. They are not gods. They are beings of immense, ancient intelligence whose motivations are as alien as their biology. Their stability can feel like stagnation, their wisdom like condescension. You know the peace in the aligned nations is bought with sovereignty, and you fear that these new, convenient faiths are just another tool of control, a spiritual anesthetic to make the transition into subservience feel like an ascension. You see a world that is not just divided by politics, but by reality itself. The battle is no longer for land or resources, but for the very definition of what it means to be human. After a year of tense silence, the invitation you have dreaded and secretly craved finally arrives. It is for you and you alone. The aligned nations see it as a monumental step forward in relations. The resistance sees it as your final seduction. For you, it feels like stepping into the lion's den, but the lion has promised to be a gracious host. You are taken to a designated point in the mid-Atlantic, where one of their vessels surfaces to meet you. It's not a machine, it's a living creature, a bioengineered leviathan whose insides are a calm, pressurized chamber of warm, breathable air. The descent is not a journey, it's a transition. There is no sense of motion, only a change in the light filtering through the creature's translucent hide, from the blue of the sunlit ocean to the silver-blue glow of the city below. When you arrive, you are allowed to leave the vessel. You wear a simple, thin suit that regulates the unique pressures and allows you to breathe the heavily oxygenated water as if it were air, and you float through the heart of Atlantis. The scale is impossible, the beauty breathtaking. Crystalline structures that sing with low, harmonic frequencies spiral around a central energy column that pulses like a captive star. Gardens of bioluminescent flora in 1,000 impossible colors sway in the gentle currents. The city is silent, yet filled with the hum of life and power. It is a utopia, a perfect, serene, and deeply unsettling utopia. Your guides are the same elegant, telepathic beings you first encountered, the ruling caste. They call themselves the Shapers. They show you their halls of knowledge, their art forms that are woven from living light, their peaceful, purposeful society. For days, you are enchanted. There is no crime, no poverty, no waste. Every citizen you see moves with a grace and contentment that is unnerving. It is a society that has solved every problem that plagues the surface world. But then you begin to notice the details. You see that the Atlanteans who perform the manual labor, tending the kelp forests, guiding the nutrient flows, maintaining the city's glowing arteries, are different. They are built more solidly, their bodies thicker, their movements less elegant and more functional. Their skin has a duller, more uniform sheen, and the bioluminescent patterns on their bodies are simple, static lines. The Shapers communicate with them not with the rich, conceptual telepathy they use with you, but with simple, direct mental commands. One day you are shown the cradles. In a vast, warm cavern, thousands of gestating pods hang from the ceiling, each containing a developing Atlantean. A Shaper explains, with a serene lack of malice, that this is the heart of their stability. They do not have children, they have production cycles. Each citizen is designed for their role from conception. The elegant, intelligent Shapers are the alpha caste. The strong, diligent laborers are the beta caste. And then you see the third caste, the gammas, small, scuttling creatures, barely sentient, whose bodies are perfectly formed to clean vents or process waste. They are living tools. It's a society built on the principles of a naked mole rat colony, but scaled up to sentient beings with the tools of godlike genetic engineering. This isn't a civilization. It is a perfect, beautiful, and terrifying execution of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. The peace you've been admiring isn't achieved through philosophy or law. It's achieved by engineering discontent, ambition, and even complex thought out of the lower castes. Their happiness is a manufactured chemical certainty. You confront your guide, the Shaper who has been your constant companion. You project feelings of horror, of revulsion, of the sacredness of individual potential. The Shaper is not offended. It simply radiates a sense of pitying confusion. Why do you celebrate the chaotic flaw? It projects into your mind. You on the surface build a structure, then spend centuries forcing mismatched components into it, celebrating the friction and the noise as freedom. We simply design the perfect component for each place. Every being lives a life of sublime purpose, perfectly suited to their form. There is no envy, no struggle, no despair. There is only harmony. What is more benevolent than this? You realize the philosophical chasm between your species is infinitely wider than the ocean that separates you. They see humanity's chaotic, striving, messy freedom not as a virtue, but as a painful, primitive design flaw in need of a compassionate correction. Even within the Shapers, you learn, their philosophers still debated whether the complete suppression of chaotic individualism was the final step to perfection, or if a tiny, controlled spark should be kept alive, a sort of wild preserve of ambition to prevent ultimate stagnation. You look out from a balcony of living coral at the perfect, orderly city, and a cold dread washes over you. You finally understand their endgame for the surface. They don't want to conquer humanity, they want to fix it. They see your wars, your famines, your existential angst, and they have the cure. The future they offer is not one of chains and whips. It is a gilded cage for the entire human race, and they are already convincing billions to walk into it willingly. You return to the surface world a changed person. The colors of the sky seem harsh, the sounds of cities chaotic and grating. You carry the knowledge of Atlantis' true nature like a lead weight in your soul. You can't share it. Who would believe that the benevolent saviors of the aligned nations practice eugenics on a civilization-wide scale? The aligned would brand you a warmonger, and the resistance would twist your words into a justification for a global war they could not possibly win. You are an expert in a field of one, isolated by a truth too terrible to speak. You retreat to your work, burying yourself in the study of the Chimera stone, but your research is no longer driven by curiosity. It is driven by fear. You are no longer trying to understand a new science. You are trying to find a flaw in the enemy's armor. And then, the simmering global tensions ignite. The flashpoint is the Democratic Republic of Congo, a nation rich in newly charted orichalcum deposits and a tragic history of resource exploitation. A new nationalistic government, secretly backed by the resistance bloc, rises to power and makes a fateful decision. It nationalizes the vast orichalcum mines controlled by an aligned corporate consortium. For the resistance, it's a desperate gambit to secure an independent energy source. For the aligned and their silent patrons in the deep, it is an intolerable act of defiance. The conflict that follows is not called a war. The aligned call it a stability operation. But it is the first of the orichalcum wars, and it serves the same purpose as the Spanish Civil War in the 20th century. A horrifying, real-world testing ground for new ideologies and the terrifying weapons they have spawned. You watch the first battle feeds from your secure UN facility, and your blood runs cold. The resistance-backed Congolese army moves in with their most advanced equipment. Main battle tanks, attack helicopters, and elite special forces. They are met by a much smaller, aligned-backed corporate security force. The battle should be a rout. Instead, it is a massacre. The aligned forces are equipped with Atlantean-derived technology. They don't fire bullets, they project force. You watch a squadron of tanks advance across a savanna, only to suddenly crumble into dust, their armor vibrated to pieces by invisible waves from a small, humming tripod weapon a kilometer away. Attack helicopters fall from the sky, their electronics scrambled, their rotors ceasing to spin as if frozen in time by localized kinetic dampening fields. The Resistance's weapons are not just ineffective, they are irrelevant. Military analysts in the aftermath would argue whether the defeat was due to the tech gap or a simple failure of imagination from generals trained in conventional warfare. But you know the truth. You understand the physics. It's like watching a tribe of spear-wielding warriors trying to fight an enemy armed with machine guns. The contest is over before it begins. The most terrifying weapon is one they deploy against a fortified resistance command bunker deep in the jungle. There is no massive explosion. A single, silent projectile is launched, and moments later, a satellite records a shimmer in the air above the target. An area 500 meters in diameter is simply flattened. The trees, the bunker, the earth itself, all pushed down by an intense, localized gravity pulse. The resulting scar on the landscape looks eerily similar to photos of the 1908 Tunguska event, a mystery now chillingly solved. The war is over in 3 weeks. The Congolese government is toppled, a new, compliant regime is installed, and the orichalcum flows again. The victory is quiet, clean, and absolute. There are no images of bombed-out cities to horrify the world's population. The new warfare is eerily surgical, but the message is clear to every world leader. The aligned bloc, backed by Atlantis, can enforce its will wherever and whenever it chooses. The resistance is powerless to stop it. The benevolent mask has slipped, just for a moment, revealing the cold, hard face of absolute power beneath. The gilded cage, you realize, is no longer an offer. It is becoming an inevitability. And you are one of the few people on Earth who understands how the lock is built. The world licks its wounds after the Congo War. The resistance is humbled, the aligned are triumphant, and the Atlanteans retreat back into their silent, watchful poise. For you, the conflict was a catalyst. The veneer of academic curiosity is gone, replaced by a cold, desperate urgency. You work with a feverish intensity, sequestered in the subterranean UN lab that has become your entire world. You comb through the mountains of data you've collected since first contact, searching for a lever, a crack, anything. Your small, hand-picked team of loyalists thinks you're searching for a military edge for the resistance. You let them believe that. Your true fear is something you cannot yet put into words. The clue comes from a place no one else thought to look. not in the energy outputs or the force projections, but in the mundane atmospheric readings from aligned cities. For years, sensors have reported tiny, statistically irrelevant anomalies, trace amounts of novel noble gases, complex isotopes of argon and xenon that shouldn't exist in nature. They were always dismissed as sensor drift, background noise, but the noise is consistent. It's growing. You task your facility's quantum supercomputer, a resistance block machine ironically named Prometheus, with a new simulation. You input every scrap of data, the composition of the Chimera stone, the atmospheric logs, the strange residual energy signatures from the Congo battlefields. You ask it to extrapolate the atmospheric changes over a period of 500 years, assuming orichalcum use continues to expand at its current, accelerating rate. You feel a knot of dread tightening in your stomach as the simulation begins to run. The hours crawl by. Your team has gone to their bunks, but you sit alone in the sterile, blue-white glow of the control room, watching the numbers churn. The simulation models weather patterns, ocean absorption rates, solar radiation effects, and it models the slow, steady buildup of the alien gases. At 3:17 a.m., the simulation concludes. A single graph appears on the main screen. It shows two lines. One, representing Earth's current atmospheric nitrogen-oxygen mix, trends slowly, inexorably downward. The other, representing the concentration of the new, heavy, exotic gases, trends upward. The lines are predicted to cross in approximately 300 years. And in that moment, the final, most terrible piece of the puzzle clicks into place. You stand up from your chair, your legs unsteady. You look at the graph, and you see it not as data, but as a death sentence for every breathing thing on the planet's surface. Orichalcum is not a power source. That is its secondary function. Its primary function, the reason it was gifted to the world, the reason Atlantis encouraged its global adoption, is terraforming. It is a planetary atmospheric converter. Like the great oxygenation event billions of years ago, where early life poisoned the atmosphere for anaerobic organisms and made it perfect for itself, the orichalcum is bleeding off the waste products of its energy generation, the very gases needed for a denser, higher pressure atmosphere. The kind of atmosphere you would need to breathe water like air. The slow invasion isn't coming. It's been underway for years. They aren't going to conquer humanity. They are going to suffocate it. They are patiently transforming the Earth's surface into a new Atlantis, and humanity is the native life destined for extinction. You think back to your trip to their city, to the thin suit you wore, to the feel of the water. They weren't just showing you their home. They were testing their new atmosphere on a surface dweller. You were a canary in a coal mine that spans the globe. It is the most elegant, insidious, and patient plan for genocide imaginable. They made humanity the eager agent of its own destruction, convincing you to build the engines of your apocalypse and call it progress. The wars, the politics, the new religions, all of it is just a distraction while the air you breathe is slowly being replaced. You begin to debate with yourself, a frantic, silent argument in the empty room. Is this a conscious, malicious act? Or are they so ancient, so alien, that they see this as no different than tending a garden, where the native weeds must be cleared to make way for the desired crop? Does the distinction even matter? You stumble to a small porthole that looks out on a subterranean rock wall, but in your mind, you see the sky. You see children playing in parks. You see crowds cheering in stadiums. You see people sleeping in their beds, all of them breathing. In, out, a simple, unconscious act, a privilege with an expiration date. The silence from the deep is no longer a mystery. It is the patient, confident silence of a predator that knows its prey is already in the trap. The weight of the world's secret end is a crushing, solitary burden. For weeks, you exist in a state of controlled paranoia, every friendly colleague a potential spy for the aligned, every routine system scan a possible Atlantean intrusion. To reveal the truth publicly would be to invite chaos and ridicule, giving Atlantis the perfect excuse to accelerate its plans under the guise of stabilizing a hysterical surface world. The knowledge festers inside you, a poison threatening to drive you mad. You realize there is only one path forward, a desperate gamble that will either save humanity or hasten its demise. You have to tell the resistance. Using a forgotten back channel, a relic of 20th century espionage you uncovered in the UN's deep archives, you send a single, untraceable message. It contains only a set of coordinates for a decommissioned weather station on the Greenland ice sheet, and a short, cryptic phrase invoking a failed resistance intelligence operation from years prior, a code to prove you are not who they think you are. You request the presence of their highest-level strategic commands. You give them 48 hours. You arrive in the biting Arctic wind to find them waiting. The leaders of the old world's superpowers, the grim-faced generals and intelligence chiefs of the American, European, and Pan-Asian blocs, gathered in a cramped, heated geodesic dome. The animosity between them is palpable, a legacy of their own failed alliances and simmering rivalries. They look at you with open hostility. To them, you are the UN puppet, the face of the global order that failed them. "This had better be worth the risk, Doctor," the American general says, his voice flat and cold. You don't waste time with pleasantries. You connect your data slate to their secure projector and show them the simulation. You show them the atmospheric data, the isotopic decay, the inexorable lines on the graph. And then you tell them of your time in the city. You describe the cradles, the caste system, the serene, pitying philosophy of the Shapers who see humanity as a flawed species in need of a compassionate upgrade. Silence. The generals and spy masters, men and women who have seen the worst of humanity, stare at the data, their faces shifting from suspicion to incredulity, and then to a shared, cold horror. The truth, as terrifying as it is, connects all the dots. The Atlanteans' patience, their long-game strategy, the quiet efficiency of their proxy war. They weren't trying to defeat the resistance, they were merely pruning a hedge. "They're not invading," the Pan-Asian intelligence chief whispers, her voice hollow with realization. "They're renovating, and we're the mold." In that moment, in that freezing dome at the top of the world, the old world dies. The petty rivalries, the Cold War posturing, the resistance itself, it all evaporates, rendered meaningless in the face of absolute existential threat. This is no longer about spheres of influence or technological parity. It is about the survival of the species. The decision is unanimous and immediate. They form a new, secret pact, a unified command structure with a single purpose. They call it the Terran Defense Alliance, the Surface Alliance. It is humanity's last, best hope, a modern-day Manhattan Project born of desperation. The Americans pledge their vast intelligence networks and industrial might. The Europeans devote the full power of their research institutions, from CERN to the Max Planck Institute. The Pan-Asians redirect their colossal manufacturing and cyber warfare capabilities. It is the sum total of human ingenuity, finally united against a common foe. Their strategy cannot be conventional. As the strategists within the new alliance would fiercely debate in the months to come, a direct attack was suicide. The core objective became scientific. They had to find a way to halt the terraforming. The guiding principle was drawn from biochemistry, competitive inhibition. They couldn't destroy every piece of orichalcum on the planet, but perhaps they could introduce an antidote, an agent, a frequency, a counter-resonance that would bind to the orichalcum and neutralize its atmospheric conversion properties without triggering a violent reaction. Your role is transformed overnight. You are no longer a Cassandra crying into the void. You are the scientific linchpin of humanity's secret war for survival. The weight of the secret is no longer yours alone to bear, but the burden of finding a solution now rests squarely on your shoulders. For the first time since you stared into the abyss and saw a sleeping city looking back, a sliver of fragile, desperate hope cuts through your fear. Humanity is no longer stumbling blindly toward the precipice. It has turned, and it is fighting back. The newly formed Surface Alliance has the will to fight, but it lacks a weapon. The greatest minds of the old world, now working in secret, unified laboratories, find themselves running into the same fundamental wall. They can observe the effects of orichalcum, but they cannot comprehend its cause. It's a lock without a key, a black box of alien physics. Their attempts to create a competitive inhibitor are nothing more than blind guesswork. After months of fruitless research, a single, terrifying conclusion becomes clear. To build the antidote, they need the recipe for the poison. They need to understand orichalcum from the inside. And there is only one human who has ever been inside. The plan they present to you is simple, elegant, and feels like a death sentence. You must become a double agent. You, the secret scientific leader of the Resistance, must become humanity's greatest collaborator. The performance is the hardest thing you have ever done. In a globally broadcast address from the hollowed-out General Assembly Hall of the UN, you publicly announce your resignation from the Commission. You speak of the futility of resistance, the inevitability of the Atlantean-led future. You call the Resistance leaders fearful Luddites, clinging to a past that is already gone. You argue with a sickeningly convincing passion that humanity's only logical path is one of cooperation and acceptance. You become a pariah to the free world, a hero to the aligned, and in the process, you burn the identity you once had to the ground. Your name becomes a curse in the Resistance bloc, a synonym for traitor. The Atlanteans, in their ancient, confident wisdom, see your conversion not as a deception, but as the inevitable triumph of logic over sentiment. They see you as a prize, a symbol of their philosophy's power to win over even the most stubborn human minds. As the Alliance predicted, they extend a new invitation, not for a visit, but for a residency. They want you to come and work with them, to be a student of their science, a bridge to help elevate the rest of humanity. You accept. Your new life begins in the silent, shimmering beauty of the deep. You are given quarters within the city, granted access to their laboratories and archives. You are living a scientist's dream and a spy's waking nightmare. The shapers you work with are brilliant, patient, and telepathic. The mental strain is unimaginable. You have to live a lie not just with your face, but with your mind. You build complex layers of thought, a facade of genuine intellectual curiosity and admiration for their work, while burying your true purpose so deep they will hopefully never sense it. Every moment is a performance on the most intimate stage imaginable. You feel like Klaus Fuchs, the atomic spy, walking the halls of Los Alamos, knowing your every action could determine the fate of the world. Your espionage is subtle. You can't hack their systems. You have to use their own tools against them. During your research, you are allowed to run simulations on their network. You design your experiments with a hidden purpose, crafting queries that, in order to run, force the system to reveal tiny, infinitesimal clues about its core operating frequencies. You also deploy your own digital canaries, bioengineered microbes designed by the Alliance, released into the city's water filtration system. They are programmed to absorb and record the specific energy resonance of the central orichalcum conduit before being flushed into a waste reclamation unit where you can later retrieve their data logs. For months, you feed a slow, steady trickle of this precious data to the Surface Alliance through a high-frequency transmission device disguised as a simple geological sensor. Back on the surface, the Alliance spy masters argue constantly whether the data is genuine or if the Atlanteans are playing a game of disinformation, feeding you the very secrets they want you to find. Then, one cycle, you find it. Buried in the subharmonics of the city's primary energy grid, you isolate a single, repeating resonant frequency. It's not part of the power generation. It's a carrier wave, a constant, planetary-scale broadcast. A frequency that matches the anomalous decay rate of the surface atmosphere perfectly. It's the trigger, the secret command that tells every piece of orichalcum on Earth not just to provide energy, but to change the very air. You have found the heart of the slow invasion. You have found the target. And as you transmit the string of data to the surface, you know that the time for secrets is over. The time for war is about to begin. The data string you transmit from the deep is the spark that ignites the world. In secret bunkers, buried deep beneath continents, the scientists of the Surface Alliance work in a state of controlled frenzy. Your discovery, the terraforming frequency, is the missing variable in all their equations. With it, they can finalize their weapon, not a bomb designed to kill, but a countermeasure designed to save. They call it the echo-muting device, a system built on a principle similar to the simple auditory illusion of binaural beats. It won't destroy the Atlantean signal. It will introduce a perfectly calibrated counter-resonance that will confuse the orichalcum network, causing it to ignore the terraforming command. The plan, codenamed Operation Overlord II, in a nod to the great turning point of the last World War, is a global gambit of staggering complexity. For years, the Alliance has been secretly constructing a series of colossal broadcast arrays in the most remote places on Earth. Deep within the Sahara, across the desolate plains of Siberia, and beneath a kilometer of Antarctic ice. At a precisely coordinated moment, these arrays will activate, blanketing the planet in the muting frequency. But this is only a temporary shield. To win, they must cut the head off the snake, and you are the viper's fang. Your final mission is communicated to you in a burst of compressed data hidden within a routine supply package. You must deliver a payload to the city's central energy conduit, the source of the broadcast. The payload isn't a bomb. It's a device you built yourself, under the watchful eyes of the Shapers, disguised as a deep resonance scanner for your research. In reality, it's a parasitic device designed to permanently latch onto the conduit and overwrite the terraforming frequency at its source. The day of the operation arrives. The world holds a breath it doesn't know it's holding. In command centers across the resistance block, clocks count down in perfect synchronicity. You stand in your Atlantean laboratory, the device, cool and smooth in your hands, feeling like the heaviest object in the universe. Your mind is a fortress, every thought a carefully placed stone to hide the screaming panic within. Then the moment comes. Execute is the simple, unified command given in Cheyenne Mountain, in Brussels, in a bunker deep below Beijing. Across the planet, the great arrays hum to life, pouring a silent, invisible wave of energy into the fabric of the planet. On the surface, the effect is almost imperceptible. A slight flicker in the lights of an aligned city, a change in the pitch of a humming orichalcum-powered train. But in the Alliance labs, scientists watch their instruments with tears in their eyes. The atmospheric decay, the slow poisoning of their world halts, the line on the graph flatlines. In Atlantis, the effect is instantaneous and profound. A psychic ripple of dissonance washes through the city. The serene, harmonic thrum of the central conduit wavers, an impurity introduced into their perfect system. The Shapers freeze, their physical and mental poise shattered for the first time in millennia. They radiate confusion, disbelief, a search for the source of the discord. This is the distraction the Alliance commanders were counting on, the strategic debate they would have for years. Did the broadcast provide the perfect cover, or did it alert the enemy too soon? For you, it is simply your cue. This is your only window. With your heart hammering against your ribs, you pick up the device. You project an aura of scientific urgency, a desire to scan the conduit to help diagnose the problem. The preoccupied Shapers barely register you as you exit the lab, and begin moving through the grand, spiraling corridors towards the city's glowing, thrumming heart. Every graceful, floating Atlantean you pass feels like a guard who could at any moment read the treason in your mind. The city, once a place of serene beauty, now feels like the most dangerous place in existence. You are a single, flawed human carrying the fate of your entire species, walking toward the altar of a sleeping god you intend to deafen. You move through the grand chamber at the heart of Atlantis, a space that feels like the inside of a living star. The central conduit, a pillar of pure, controlled energy, pulses with a sickening, arrhythmic beat. The shapers float around it, their elegant forms rigid with concentration, their collective consciousness focused on purging the alien frequency of the Surface Alliance from their network. They are cosmic surgeons trying to remove a phantom tumor. You are the real cancer, and you are walking right past them. One of them turns its vast, dark eyes upon you. A wave of focused, questioning telepathy washes over you, sharp as broken glass. Your agitation is a discordant note in this chamber. Explain. You force your mind into the persona you have cultivated for months. You project fear, but direct it at the unstable conduit. You project scientific curiosity, a desperate need to understand the phenomenon up close. The resonance cascade, I have never witnessed such power. My scanner may help isolate the hostile frequency if I can get a direct reading from the primary matrix. The shaper hesitates for a fraction of a second, its mind torn between suspicion and the logic of your request. It sees you as a primitive, but a useful one. It grants you permission with a curt mental nod before turning its full attention back to the greater problem. You do not waste the opening. You float to the base of the colossal energy column, the disguised device held out before you like an offering. The air crackles, and you feel your hair stand on end. You press the device against the conduit's shimmering surface. It latches on with a soft click. You send the activation command with a thought. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, everything happens. The device doesn't explode. It sings. It broadcasts its new, parasitic frequency directly into the heart of the network. The terraforming command is overwritten, replaced by a null code. The effect is not what the Alliance scientists predicted. They expected a quiet muting. They did not account for the nature of such an ancient, interconnected, and fundamentally brittle system. You have not just flipped a switch. You have thrown a wrench into the core of a divine machine. A silent scream of pure energy erupts from the conduit. The feedback loop is instantaneous and absolute. The stable blue-white light of the column turns a furious, hemorrhaging violet. Tendrils of raw, uncontrolled power lash out, vaporizing the shapers nearest to them. The harmonious hum of the city becomes a deafening, discordant roar. The living architecture, starved of its stable lifeblood, begins to fail. Crystalline towers, grown over millennia, shatter like glass. Great arches of bioluminescent coral crumble into dust. The lights of Atlantis, which have burned for 11,000 years, flicker and die, plunging the city into a terrifying, crushing darkness, punctuated by the violent flashes of its death throes. This cataclysm is not contained to the deep. The feedback surge travels up the network, a tsunami of energy roaring through every orichalcum device on the planet. On the surface, it is a technological apocalypse, the 1977 New York City blackout on a global scale. In the aligned nations, the gleaming cities go dark in an instant. Maglev trains seize and crash. Automated farms fail. Water and power grids cease to exist. Their entire society, built upon the Atlantean gift, collapses in a single moment. The resistance bloc is not immune. Though they resisted the new technology, the world's economy and infrastructure were inextricably linked. Global communications satellites, powered by orichalcum cores, go silent. The internet dies. International trade, shipping, and finance, all centrally managed through aligned data hubs, evaporate. The world is plunged into a new dark age, a time of silence, confusion, and scarcity. You are thrown across the chamber by an energy wave, your suit saving you from the worst of it, but cracking along the seams. As you lie amid the wreckage of the dying city, the psychic death wail of a civilization echoes in your fractured consciousness. You have done it. You have saved the world's atmosphere. You have won. But as you watch the last lights of Atlantis fade to black, and you imagine the lights of your own world extinguishing one by one, you know that the survivors in the long, dark night that is to come will forever debate whether you were the greatest hero in human history or the monster who plunged it into ruin. You do not die in the dark of the abyss. In the chaos of the city's collapse, you scramble through shattered corridors and dying architecture, the psychic screams of the last shapers fading in your mind. You find a bioluminescent pod, a simple transport drone, damaged but functional. It carries you away from the epicenter of the cataclysm through the blackening water and begins its final, pre-programmed ascent. When you breach the surface, gasping in the thin, precious air of your own world, you are the sole survivor of a war that no one else knew was being fought. The world you returned to was one of broken trust and broken machines. The centuries that followed, the period the new historians call the unraveling, were a testament to humanity's deepest flaws and its most profound resilience. Now, 400 years later, humanity lives in the age of balance. The world is nothing like the one you left behind, nor is it the gleaming utopia the Aligned had built, nor the grim fortress of the Resistance. It is something new, something quieter, something scarred and beautiful. The great centralized superpowers of the past are gone, shattered by the collapse like all the other brittle systems. The world is a patchwork quilt of self-sufficient city-states and regional federations, bound not by global networks, but by sea lanes and revived terrestrial trade routes. It is a world remade on a human scale. This is not a world of primitive ignorance. The scientific knowledge of the past was preserved in hardened data archives, the great gift of the Surface Alliance to its descendants. It is a low-tech, high-knowledge society. They understand quantum physics, but their power comes from geothermal vents and vast solar farms. They understand genetics, but they apply it to creating hardier crops, not to designing caste systems. Their technology is robust, repairable, and decentralized. The philosophy of the age is inspired by the ancient Japanese art of kintsugi, the belief that when something is broken, the repair is part of its history and should not be hidden. Their cities are built on the foundations of the old, the scars of the collapse often visible, a permanent architectural reminder of the price of hubris. The legacy of Atlantis is everywhere and nowhere. The shattered remnants of their continent, now called the Drowned Lands, are a cursed place on every map, a zone of unpredictable energy storms and ghostly lights that sailors avoid at all cost. Small, inert fragments of orichalcum are sometimes found, treated not as treasures, but as dangerous, holy relics, warnings against temptation. The ocean is no longer a frontier to be conquered, but a vast, unknowable power to be respected, even feared. New syncretic faiths blend old-world beliefs with a deep ecological reverence and a foundational myth about the gods who fell and the human who pushed. Historians of the Balanced Age still argue whether the pre-collapse civilization, with its globe-spanning internet and instantaneous travel, represented a glorious peak that was tragically lost, or a dangerous, unsustainable bubble whose bursting was inevitable, with Atlantis merely being the pin. This debate is at the heart of their culture, a constant check on their ambition. It is a world that has, in many ways, learned the lessons of the Bronze Age collapse that afflicted the ancient Mediterranean, understanding that over-centralization and dependency on a single system, be it a trade network or a magical energy source, is a fatal weakness. And your legacy, you are the central figure of this new age, a person of mythic, complicated stature. You are not simply a hero. In some regions, you are the liberator, the one who freed humanity from the golden chains. In others, you are the world breaker, the saboteur whose actions plunged civilization into darkness. Most often, you are simply known as the witness, the one who saw both sides and made an impossible choice. Your story, pieced together from recovered Alliance logs and your own scattered writings after your return, is the foundational text of the era. It is a cautionary tale taught to every child, a story of temptation, hidden dangers, and the terrible, necessary cost of true freedom. You are not a god, a king, or a general. You are a lesson, and in this quieter, more balanced world, that is a far more important thing to be. In the 4th century of the Age of Balance, in a small, whitewashed cottage on the cliffs of what was once called Ireland, an old man sits and watches the sea. That old man is you. After your return, after you told your story to the shell-shocked remnants of the world's governments, you did not seek power or fame. You became a modern Cincinnatus, the Roman dictator who saved his city and immediately returned to his farm. You vanished into the quiet reconstruction of the world, your name passing into legend while the person behind it simply sought peace. Your cottage overlooks the endless gray-green expanse of the Atlantic. The ocean is your constant companion, a source of solace and a keeper of ghosts. On quiet nights, when the wind is just right, you can almost hear a deep, low hum from the water. You know it's likely just a phantom of your own memory, or perhaps a natural phenomenon, like that mysterious, ultra-low frequency sound they called the bloop in the old world. A reminder that the sea is vast and holds its own secrets, but they are the planet's secrets now, not theirs. One afternoon, a young woman finds her way to your door. She is a history student from the University of New Cork, her face earnest, her eyes full of the questions that have defined the last 4 centuries. She has brought you a gift, a small, smooth stone polished by the tide. You accept it, its simple, honest weight a comfort in your hand. She asks the question you have been asked 1,000 times, the question that is the core of her generation's grandest scholarly debate. Witness, she says, using your formal title. After all this time, we all still ask, was it worth it? The collapse, the unraveling, the silence, was the price of our freedom too high? You look away from her, out toward the horizon where the sky meets the water. You think of the serene, terrible beauty of Atlantis, of the perfect, passionless harmony of its people. You remember the shared consciousness, the absence of want, the end of all struggle. It was a vision of heaven designed by minds that saw individuality as a flaw. Then you think of the world before the collapse, the world of frantic, glorious, terrible, striving humanity. A world of art and war, of love and cruelty, of pointless ambition and breathtaking genius. It was chaotic, it was flawed, but it was ours. They offered us a perfect cage of gold and crystal, you say, your voice raspy with age. They promised to cure us of the disease that is our own nature. They would have smoothed away all our rough edges, our fears, our messy desires, our potential. They would have made us safe, and in exchange, we would have ceased to be human. We would have become a stable, contented herd, another caste in their perfect system. You turn back to her, your eyes meeting hers. The price was the world we knew. The price was nearly everything. But what we bought with it was the freedom to make our own mistakes, the freedom to be flawed and to strive, to fail and to build again. We bought the right to our own future, whatever it may be. A difficult freedom is always worth more than a comfortable servitude. She nods, a slow understanding dawning in her eyes. She thanks you and leaves you to your thoughts. You sit in your chair as the sun begins to set, casting a long, golden path across the water. The world you live in is smaller, quieter, and harder than the one you were born into. But it is free. The air is their own. Their future is unwritten. Your story, the main part of it, is over. The echoes of Atlantis are finally fading, becoming just whispers on the wind, a lesson learned, a nightmare survived. You watch the last sliver of sun dip below the waves, and for the first time in a very long time, the ocean is just the ocean. Word count 1047. And so, the story comes to its gentle end. The echoes on the water have faded, and the world of the witness has settled into a quiet, lasting peace. The great, tumultuous saga of a civilization found and lost, of a gift that was a cage, and of a freedom bought at a terrible price, now recedes into the realm of imagination. It serves as a soft reminder of how fragile our own history is, how a single change, a single discovery, can redirect the river of time into a completely new and unknown sea. But that is a thought for the daytime, for the world of light and noise. For now, that world can be left behind. The tale is told. The great what if has been answered, and the resolution rests now in the quiet of your room. Let the remaining tension from the story dissolve, like salt in the calm, deep water. Feel the weight of your own comfortable reality, the simple, steady rhythm of your own breathing in the safe and silent night. The story is over, and you are here secure. Allow the final images to soften, the sharp edges of the tale blurring now, drifting away on a peaceful tide. Just let it all go. Hush now, it's time to drift. It's time to dream. Sweet dreams.